The Gilgamesh Epic, introduction by Professor Morris Jastrow Jr. The story of the adventures of Gilgamesh is the most considerable literary production that has come down to us from ancient Babylonia. Unfortunately, it has not been preserved in complete form. With the exception of a single fragment written in the older form of Babylonian cuneiform, all the other portions of the tablet are known to us from the late Assyrian copies found in the remains of the remarkable clay library of King Ashur-banipal of Assyria, 668 to 626 BC, which he gathered in his palace at Nineveh and which was unearthed by Layard in the course of his excavations on the site of Nineveh opposite Mosul. That's Henry Layard. These fragments belonging to various copies show that the adventures of the famous hero were recounted in a series of 12 tablets, and there are reasons for believing, as first suggested by Sir Henry C. Rawlinson, that there is some relationship between the 12 tablets and the 12 months of the year. Thus, in the 6th tablet, the rejection by Gilgamesh of the advances made by the goddess Ishtar, the goddess of love and vegetation and general fertility, is probably a reflection of the decline of vegetation after the summer season had reached its height. And again, the story of a destructive deluge or flood related in the 11th tablet is clearly associated with the 11th month, in which the rains and storms of the wintry season are at their height. The name Gilgamesh itself is of foreign origin, which points to a non-Babylonian source for at least the basis of the tale. The home of Gilgamesh appears to have been in ancient Elam, lying to the east of the Euphrates Valley. In the tale itself, however, he is associated with the city of Uruk, one of the chief cities in the southern section of the Euphrates Valley, a city which played a prominent part in the Old Sumerian and in the later Akkadian period. The name Gilgamesh is written with the determinative for deity, and in one passage of the epic he is described as 2/3 God. This would not necessarily mean that Gilgamesh was originally a deity, but rather that, as frequently happens, a great popular hero was identified with some god. In the case of Gilgamesh, the deity with whom he is thus associated appears to have been the sun god. In the episode with the goddess Ishtar, he plays much the same part as does the Sumerian deity Tammuz, or, to give his fuller name, Du-Mu-Zi-Apsu, meaning legitimate child of the deep, who was a solar deity regarded as both the sun and the consort of the goddess Ishtar. Besides the epic, a hymn to Gilgamesh has been preserved which celebrates him as a solar deity, and he is also invoked in incantations and included in omens. The name also occurs in the list, printed in the present volume, giving the names of the earliest rulers of Babylonia. There's a footnote indication here by this particular number 1. See also Arno Preable Historical and Grammatical Texts, number 2, Publications of the University of Pennsylvania Museum Babylonian Section, volume 4, number 1, Philadelphia, 1914. See Barton Archaeology in the Bible, page 264. The length of the reigns, 100 to 1200 years, assigned to these rulers shows that they are purely fabulous, though it is not impossible that some of those mentioned may represent royal personages who have been relegated to the realm of legend and myth. According to this list, Gilgamesh ruled 126 years. There are therefore some reasons for supposing that Gilgamesh may have been a very ancient conqueror who came from Elam and established his rule in the city of Uruk. His father appears to have been a lord of Kalab, and his mother was the goddess Ninsun. How he came to be the popular hero of Babylonia and of Assyria, it is quite impossible to say. traditions in regard to his superhuman strength may have formed an element in bringing about the position which Gilgamesh occupies in the epic. At all events, he becomes a favourable personage of whom all manner of exploits are related, attaching to himself popular myths and associated with all kinds of traditions. The Gilgamesh epic, like all compositions of the ancient Orient, is a composite production. The old Babylonian fragment above referred to dating from the Hammurabi period, shows that the epic had already taken shape as early at least as 2000 BC. Whether it was complete at that time it is impossible to say. From internal evidence, however, it seems safe to assert that it received the shape in which we find it in the fragment of Ashurbanipal's library as early as 1500 BC. By a careful analysis, we are still able to follow the process of the gradual growth of the epic by adding one episode after the other, and it is also evident from the very minor and in some cases purely incidental part played by Gilgamesh that he had no connection originally with some of the episodes. He is more or less artificially brought into connection with these episodes, though the attempt is also made to weld the various tales together so as to form a tolerably continuous story. The fragmentary form of the tablets which have been preserved makes a complete translation impossible. Hence, for the present volume, explanations connect the portions which can be fully and surely understood. Several summaries of the epic have been given to the English reading public, but the present is the fullest translation which has yet been issued in our language. The Gilgamesh epic, the first tablet. The epic begins with the description of the hero who saw everything, who in the course of his career acquired wisdom and penetrated into the mystery of things, and who passed through many trials. As a ruler of Uruk, his work in building a wall around the city and his erection of the famous temple Eanna are singled out for special mention. He is described as 2/3 God and 1/3 man. It is related how he forced the people of Uruk to such hard service in carrying out his building operations as to lead them to appeal to the gods for deliverance from the tyranny of their ruler. They implore the goddess Aruru, "Thou, Aruru, has created Gilgamesh, now create a rival to him. At the time when it pleases him, let him come. Let them strive with one another so that Uruk may have rest." Thus, incidental to the story, there follows a description of the creation of a human being by Aruru, which evidently embodies an earlier tradition. 2. The Sumerian and Akkadians had various traditions of the creation of the world and of the production of mankind. See the earlier pages of this volume. Thus, incidentally to the story, there follows a description of the creation of a human being by Aruru, which evidently embodies an earlier tradition of the way in which mankind came into being, produced directly by the gods. When Aruru heard this, she made in her heart a likeness of Anu. 3. The supreme god of heaven. She was the supreme god of heaven. Aruru washed her hands, took a piece of clay and spat on it. In Gidu she created the hero a lofty offspring. Covered with hair was his whole body, he wore his hair like a woman. Engidu. He wore his hair like a woman. He knew nothing of land or peoples, he was clothed like the god Sumukan. With the gazelles he eats herbs, with the cattle he drinks at the trough, with the living swarm of the water is his heart contented. The description is clearly that of primeval man living in a wild state of nature, close to the animal world, and half animal himself in his appearance. In order to bring this tale, or myth, which clearly had an existence independent of the Gilgamesh epic, into association with the hero, the plan is formed by a hunter and his father to induce Engidu to leave his animal companions and come to Gilgamesh in order to become his rival. A maiden, described as a harlot, is brought to the trough where Engidu comes to drink with the beasts and cattle. She is to lure him by her charms and succeeds in doing so. In the frank manner of primitive tales, the love scene between Enkidu and the maiden is described in a manner to leave nothing to the imagination, because perhaps she would lay down on the grass, open herself up, and did some things which attracted him and won him over. After satiating himself with the charms of the harlot for 6 days and 7 nights, a complete change has come over Enkidu, who now no longer finds any pleasure in the animals about him. Indeed, the latter recognise the changes and flee from him. The harlot says to Enkidu, "Beautiful art thou, Enkidu, like a god art thou. Why dost thou wish to dash across the field with the swarm of animals? Come, I will take thee to the enclosed Uruk, to the pure house, the dwelling of Anu and Ishtar, where Gilgamesh dwells, unique in strength, and like a wild bull, powerfully rules the people." To further stir up his ambition, she tells him of 2 dreams that Gilgamesh had, foretelling a coming test of strength with another hero. Enkidu understands the purport and agrees to go to Gilgamesh. In this way, the two are brought together, him and Gilgamesh. Second and third tablets. The second tablet is very imperfectly preserved. Indeed, it is difficult to determine the dividing line between the second and third tablets. From an analysis of the fragments, which must belong to the one or the other, we gather that after a tussle between the 2 heroes, they strike up a friendship and further plan an exploit, which they are to undertake in common, to proceed to a cedar wood in which a tyrant Kumbaba reigns. For some reason which, until further fragments shall have been discovered, is puzzling, Enkidu is either lured back to the wilderness and once more becomes a companion of the animals, or in a dream is transported to his former state. He laments the enticement of the harlot which had led him away from his haunts. On seal cylinders, the picture of the wild, primitive man with the long locks and either naked or clothed in skins and surrounded by animals, or in conflict with them, is frequently depicted. 4. Ward, seal cylinders of Western Asia, chapters 7 and 10. Enkidu is represented as cursing the harlot who, at the instigation of the hunter, brought him to Uruk, but the sun god Shamash intervenes and shows him the benefits conferred by the harlot and recalls to him the outlook for a happy life in conjunction with his royal friend Gilgamesh. Enkidu is reconciled to his companionship with Gilgamesh, but is again disturbed by terrible dreams in which he is carried away by demons to the lower world. The description of this abode of the dead is interesting. 4th and 5th tablets. The chief episode dealt with in the 4th and 5th tablets is the overthrow of the tyrant Kumbaba, who is pictured as dwelling in a magnificent wood of cedars in a far-off country. The meaning of the episode is obscure, and unfortunately the fragmentary conditions of the 2 tablets in question makes it impossible to give even a definite answer to the very natural question of the situation of the cedar forest where the tyrant dwelt. Until recently, the general opinion was in favour of regarding Kumbaba as the ruler of Elam, to the east of Babylonia, and of placing the seat of his rule somewhere in the mountainous regions to the northeast of Babylonia. It is not, however, certain that Kumbaba is an Elamitic name, and there are various indications which speak in favour of seeking for the cedar forest in the Amanus Mountains, northern Syria, or perhaps in the regions still farther north. Gilgamesh, accompanied by Enkidu, is to proceed against the tyrant. Both appear to be in mortal terror of the outcome of the conflict. The mother of Gilgamesh, who is the goddess Ninsun, prays to the sun god Shamash to protect his son and accompanies the prayer with an offering. She raises her hands to Shamash, etc. Enkidu's terror manifests itself in several troublesome dreams which are sent to him, but which apparently are interpreted as an indication that Gilgamesh will triumph. They proceed and at least reach the cedar forest, which arouses their astonishment. Or in some, they go to fight this protector of this cedar forest, put there by the gods. Gilgamesh has a go at it, but he wants to run away, because he feels they can't beat it. But Enkidu says, no, let's carry on, we can win, and eventually kills it, cuts his head off, and the gods find out, and Enkidu, one of them has to pay the price for killing their favoured guardian. So apparently Enkidu dies, and then his best friend Gilgamesh mourns for him, and he travels all over the world, and he hears about his grief, and he hears about an immortal called Upanisham, i.e. Noah of the Bible, an immortal. So he's living forever, so he's going to try and find the secret of how do you live forever, that sort of thing. That's that in short. Okay. You got the 6th tablet here. where Gilgamesh rejects Ishtar. 7th and 8th tablets. Of these 2 tablets, again, only small sections remain. They tell of the death of Enkidu and of the lament of Gilgamesh for his unfortunate friends. The death scene of Enkidu is most impressively described. 9th and 10th tablets. The 9th tablet opens with Gilgamesh's bitter lament for the death of his companion Enkidu, and this lament, frequently repeated, also pervades the 10th tablet. He weeps bitterly for the loss of his friend, etc., etc. Gilgamesh tells the scorpion men of his mission, which leads him through the mountain guarded by the scorpions. Apparently Gilgamesh has reached the ends of the world, for the mountain is described as lying at the point where the horizon touches the lower world. Gilgamesh now asks Sabitu to direct him on the way to Ut-Napishtim. That's the immortal, i.e. Noah. He is determined to find his way to Ut-Napishtim, whether by water or on land. Sabitu holds out no hope of his carrying out his purpose. Sabitu said to Gilgamesh, "There is no ferry, Gilgamesh. There's no boat to take him there." This leads up to the 11th tablet, where Gilgamesh, after hearing the despairing message of Ut-Napishtim, nevertheless is bold enough to put the question to the latter, how it happened that Ut-Napishtim, although a mortal, should have escaped the common fate or death. In reply, Ut-Napishtim tells the famous story of the Babylonian deluge, the flood, how at one time the gods decided to bring on a destructive storm in which all mankind perished, with the exception of Ut-Napishtim and his wife and belongings, saved through the intervention of the god Ea. The 11th tablet begins as follows. Gilgamesh speaks to him, to Ut-Napishtim, the far removed. "I gaze at thee, Ut-Napishtim. Thy appearance is not different. As I am, so art thou, and thou art not different," etc., etc. And in reply, Ut-Napishtim tells the following story. And he reveals to Gilgamesh a secret story. This continues. Enlil is moved by this eloquent appeal and is reconciled. He himself accords immortal life to Ut-Napishtim and his wife, and with this act the story ends. And 12th tablet. Another tablet is added to the adventures, which is concerned solely with the predominating thought of the second half of the epic, the sad prospect of death. Gilgamesh knows that it is no longer possible for him to escape the fate of all mankind, or death, but he is anxious at least to know something of the condition of those who have passed away. Where are they? Are they conscious? What is their fate? The purely didactic and speculative character of the closing tablet is thus evident. It embodies some of the speculations of theologians of ancient Babylonia on the basis of popular beliefs, which assumed that all the dead were huddled together in a great subterranean cave, conscious but helpless. The Great Age of Babylonia, 2100 to 1100 BC. Other religious legends. Food of life they brought him, but he ate not. Water of life they brought him, but he drank not. Adapa legend. Other religious legends. Introduction. In addition to the creation and Gilgamesh epic, several other tablets series have come down to us. though no other forms such extended or connected stories. The legend of Adapa presented here has aroused wide interest because of its resemblance and a difference to the Genesis account of the Tree of Life. In the Adapa tale, the gods would give the hero eternal life, but he, through overcaution following the counsel of the god Ea, rejects the food and water of life. Wisdom and knowledge Adapa already had, so that with the same materials, the story at each point reverses that of Adam. Instead of being disobedient, Adapa is too obedient. What finally became of Adapa we do not know, as his tale is incomplete. The legend is now known from 4 tablets. 3 of these were in Ashurbanipal's library. The 4th, which parallels and enlarges part of one of the others, was found at Tel el Amarna in Egypt. Its date is about 1400 BC, and from the way it is marked, it was probably a common text used to teach the Babylonian tongue to Egyptian scholars. Hence, we have here another evidence of how aged were many of the texts which Ashurbanipal copied, and of how little they changed with the passage of the centuries. The legend of the 7 evil spirits is from a long series of 16 tablets, all dealing with demons. The series is in Ashurbanipal's library and gives a late text side by side with an old Sumerian one. Perhaps in their original form, these demon texts were very old, but our present Sumerian copy has Marduk of Babylon as its chief deity, and hence cannot antedate the time of Babylon's power. The 7 are favourite figures of Babylonian and Assyrian magic. Much of the old literature of fear is based upon them. The remarkable tale of Ishtar's descent into the lower world brings us with almost painful sharpness to face the Babylonian conception of afterlife. There is a world of the dead, but it is a bleak shadow world, a house without light for him who enters. Its queen, when she hears of Ishtar's coming, cries out in amazement, asking what has moved Ishtar's heart that she should wish to dwell in this dead and shriveled home. To eat clay as food, to drink dust as wine. It is as drear as the stern old Scandinavian myth of the icebound world of the dead souls who have missed Valhalla, but Babylon knew no Valhalla. Other religious legends, Adapa and the Food of Life, tablet number 1, there's a 2 indication there. It has all this information here. About those tablets, about the story behind it, on it. And here it is in English. The 7 evil spirits. This story is the 16th tablet of a series called the Evil Demon series, of which we have an Assyrian with a parallel Sumerian text. Presumably, therefore, it was a very ancient legend. It is translated by R.C. Thomas. Descent of the goddess Ishtar into the lower world.